All right, Howie. Well, thank you so much for coming on. As Wally mentioned, I had just a great conversation with Gord, just a fabulous guy. And we have so many friends in common in the city. But really our paths, I don't think I've crossed at this point. So luckily we were on the same flight out. So sometimes I think at these coaching conferences, that's when you get to meet the people. The most is outside of the actual conferences. So what I was so fascinated with was, well, even just commenting on the games, the adherence to belief in the process by the girls at such a young age was phenomenal, despite major setbacks that don't normally happen to Canadian teams. And the belief in each other, there didn't seem to be any turning on each other. So despite the fact that, yes, these girls are skilled, and I, albeit haven't seen many PW or junior games, the level, like Wally says, is so high. I'd seen a couple this year. So the skill is there. But to me, that all comes down to coaching. And you're going to say it's not you, it's your entire coaching staff. So we'll just get that out of the way. We understand it's your whole coaching staff. But the way that you created culture, and Gord went through, I mean, Gord has a tattoo from the last ones that he was with you, where you guys didn't even win, but it made such an impact on him. So I'm curious about the 3 steps of culture. Now, this is going to be a huge conversation, obviously, but specifically how you develop that, and is it different for every team you work with? And are you just constantly at library trying to figure out these 3 different steps for 3 different teams? So if you can talk first about that culture piece, I would love to hear in a short-term tournament how you created that with this team and your process.
Okay. Well, yeah, I as I mentioned to you when we traded emails, I would really love to give some kind of nugget of a goal for everybody on how to build culture, and I really don't have a recipe, and it's not really something that that I can even conceptualize in my own mind. So that's why I hesitate to talk to all these great hockey minds, and because I know that you guys share a lot of information on the game, and you're always discussing ways to make it better and to be innovative, and I think that's what's really exciting about this group. And I hope that I can try and at least I'll try and walk you through the process that I have, and maybe some of that, you'll find that there's some similarities in terms of some of the stuff that you've read. But I'll start off by saying I think first and foremost I recognize the significance of it, and I know we all do, and I know all coaches do, but I don't know that all coaches make a purposeful decision to have an impact on the culture. I think they do in some way, and sometimes it turns out to be good, and sometimes it turns out to be not so good. But I think generally speaking, they talk about it, but then they really just don't. They really don't do anything about it. And then what happens typically, as in a petri dish, because I guess that's where one of those, where culture kind of grows oftentimes, is it'll grow anyway. And if you're not purposeful in it, then it could potentially go in a direction that you don't want it to go. So how did I come to know this? Well, I had the opportunity to play under Clare Drake and play in the Golden Bears hockey program. And I can honestly say that I think I was a pretty good person at that time, and I think I had strong values, although I had no idea what values were really. But I can say quite honestly that definitely I became more of a mature man, and I understood. I became conscious of the value of culture and the values within a positive culture when I played for Coach Drake, because he was a value-oriented coach. So I was exposed to this man who placed importance not on winning, because Clare Drake never talked about winning. He never talked about championships. He never came across, like all the other coaches that I had had up to that point, winning was the most important thing. Now, we won a lot with the Golden Bears, and they continue to win a lot. So this culture is, it's continuing. It's beyond his years, because he's instilled it within that program. But it was always about the values, and he spoke about values continually in his stories. He demonstrated them as a man. He modeled them. The leaders, he managed somehow to impart, so the returning players all had these similar values. So that impressed me automatically as a young man coming in. And I wanted to be that. I wanted to be this person that, followed those values. And I think that was the amazing thing. So anyway, so I think just having that opportunity, Sammy, of learning and seeing what culture was about. And it wasn't until after I was finished with the Bears that I really, I think, fully understood what I had when I was there. And as a matter of fact, I ended up doing a master's. My thesis was on Coach Drake and his leadership style, because he had such a lasting impact on me and so many other people.
Is that thesis published somewhere? That would be such an amazing read now, later on.
Yeah, you could probably find it online somewhere. I think it was called, I can't even remember, Clare Drake, I think, Humble Leadership, or it was on humble leadership. So humility was Coach Drake's strongest.
We had Clare around a little bit at the beginning of my career in Hockey Canada, which is fascinating. But Wally talks about him a lot. And obviously he has such an impact on Alberta hockey, but also Canadian hockey. But what's the connection with Clare and Father Bauer?
I'm not certain. Wally might be able to speak to that, but I do know that there is a connection. I don't know if it's a very deep connection, but I do know that there was a relationship there in some way.
Howie, when I was inducted into the Alberta Hockey Hall of Fame, I had a 3-minute talk, and most of it was talking about the influencers on me. The first being Father Bauer, and the second being Clare Drake. And I don't know that they were connected, except Clare wasn't Father Bauer was a man of the cloth. Clare wasn't, but they lived on values.
Yeah.
They were very focused, did their work for a purpose. They knew why they were doing it. And it wasn't about the outcome. So I don't know that they chatted or communicated at all. I think they just were the same in what they wanted the game to become and what the game could do for people, particularly the student athlete, because the national team was all student athletes, exceptional players. And all Father Bauer wanted was to be in the Olympics because he valued that. And I know Clare mentored during Penticton's win in 1955. I read stories about him doing that, but I don't think there was a hands-on meeting, but I could be wrong. But I think you could leave it at that values are the same and their approach was the same.
And their spider web of their influence is obviously both goes through Wally Kozak, but through so many other coaches that have this exact same philosophy, which I love.
Mm-hmm. And I think the interesting thing is that, I know Coach Drake pulled a lot of his core beliefs from John Wooden. So if you've read a lot of John Wooden's stuff, very, very similar. Just this idea of growing men as a priority and growing people as a priority, as Wally mentioned.
Wally talks about building the citizen, which I love that turn of phrase.
Yeah, and I got a story about Wally because I was thinking about how you take all this. It's a web exactly. Like nailed it. You've hit it right on the head, Sammy. Because one of my first impressions of Wally, I think the first time I met Wally, I was invited to come and take part in just as a guest coach and basically push pucks when just prior to the first Olympics. Were you in the first Olympics, Sammy? Yeah, so you're probably at that camp, and it was in Calgary.
I probably wasn't paying attention to the person pushing the pucks, but sorry.
No, I know. Don't worry about it. Because I was just there for a couple of days, but maybe it was even just one day. But I remember Wally. The thing I took from Wally was just how light you were, and you could tell that hockey wasn't the most important thing to you. Just in that brief interaction that I had with you, or got to see you work, because the players, you would give them some information, and then the players would kind of finish the sentence or something. Then you go, there, we don't even have to be here. You guys are coaching yourselves. But that. It was funny at the time, and it was light, and it kind of just brought a sense of warmth. But I think the thing that I was able to take away from it later was that you were more directed towards or intent on helping them help themselves, right? Not telling them what to do and being that direct. So that always stuck with me, Wally, and I'll never forget that. And that was 25 years ago. So absolutely. And I think just back to this whole idea of building culture, I think those cultures are going to be the strongest when the people that have the vision for the culture put the significance or the importance on building people rather than building hockey players.
Okay, so I love that backstory. Now, can you get into the real sort of nuts and bolts? Maybe even talk about this team in particular, and that will probably take you off tangents as to how you attempted to build it in the past, but what went right and what didn't go right. But obviously it worked to perfection this time. So
again, I don't, so I guess my process is, so this team, it was an interesting one because we didn't have the two sort of larger opportunities, 3-week opportunities to build the team, which is what we had in my first 2 years coaching. Because of COVID and everything. So we had an opportunity, I think we had 1.5 weeks, maybe 10 days, the previous summer. And so when I go into again, there's no recipe. I guess when I'm thinking about culture, there's 3 things. I've actually written them down here, so forgive me if I pull them out here. First of all, I think that the things that are important to me, and we've touched on this, is we want to see everyone grow. So when I consider the team and the environment that I wanna contribute to building, I think the first thing that I think about is not only how can I help the players grow. My priority is helping them grow into better people so that they can be successful in hockey and life. But also the staff. And I think that's a piece that we miss as coaches sometimes, is that I think my job is to also contribute to their growth in whatever way I can. We've got doctors and we've got physios. I can't help them grow in their jobs, but I can help them maybe in other ways. I can give them opportunities, or I can draw ideas from them, and they can contribute to the culture in a more direct way rather than just being siloed in their individual areas. So I try and bring everybody in, because in my mind, maybe there's something that they're trying to gather from the experience, and I want to know what that is. And if there's some way that I can help them gather that skill or grow in whatever they want to grow through the process. So that's something that I always go into. I
have a quick question about how you develop that. Do you purposefully interview each of your staff members?
Yes.
And do you sometimes run out of time? I mean, it's hard to get all of that in.
Yeah, it's probably not the best system, but for my coaching staff, I'll send out right at the hop when I know who my coaches are. And when I say my coaches, I also mean strength and conditioning coach, MPCs, mental performance coaches. But I'll send out just a form, the questionnaire, asking them what they feel their strengths are, what they feel, what areas they want to improve in, what they expect from me. Some other questions that I can't think of right now, but another one is, what do you think, like, do you have a thought as to what the theme could be? So this is getting back to your original question, because, and the reason I do that, Sammy, is because I think, and this goes back to Coach Drake and what I've learned from Coach Drake, the humility part, the seeking the power of others is something that I really believe in. And I think if that can trickle down, like I try and drive that. First of all, I believe it because I don't feel that I'm perfect. In fact, I think there's so many areas that I'm far from, having skill in. And if I don't reach out from everybody in the staff, everybody, if I don't try and pull something from them, then I miss an opportunity for us to be better, for our team to be the best we can be. And so that's something I really believe in. So I try and find ways to help them grow through that. I give them opportunities that maybe are a little bit less traditional. So our strength and conditioning coach did in our first go around last summer, did a presentation, and because he was passionate about these players coming in and believing that they should be there, which was a great concept. I thought, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, okay. Well, can you build a presentation? So it's not always me doing all these presentations or the two assistant coaches. It's okay. Now we have our strength and conditioning coach. Okay, this process, we had our equipment manager did a talk on his experience in the military. So it's just trying to use all the resources and draw those skills from everybody beyond their own siloed areas, and I think that has I'm guessing, but I think that can have a strong impact on the players as well when they see that, okay, Howie, he's the coach, but he's not the guy who's doing all the talking. He's not always the guy that's up there, right? It's everybody else too. So they're seeing value in others, which is the other part that I try and drive, is to help them see that, just the power of others, and and reaching out to those. And how do you do that? And how do you grab that from them? Well, you're able to get that from them if you give to them. And so every team environment that I've tried to build since I've had the opportunity to work with Hockey Canada and the U18s, is probably the most important one, is that you are here to help others. You are not here to take and try and So this is a little wacky, and a lot of coaches, I think, would maybe disagree with this, and maybe a lot of parents too. But one of the first things that we say is, your job here is not to make this team. Your job is to help others make this team. And then the funny thing is, when you do a really good job of that, and you really buy into that, and you care about that, then you will likely make the team. And that's, I call it karma or whatever, but I truly, fundamentally believe that that's the case. And I think I've been really fortunate to have success, and I think that's why, because I just fundamentally believe that the more I give, the more somehow it'll come back around, and it'll help me experience great things. And so I can't even remember what your original question was, Sammy, because but I was going through this.
I just want to reiterate some of the great phrases that you just said, that I love about power, the more you give it, you'll get it back. I mean, I love that mentality. And I love the idea of, you're here to help others. I mean, I'm starting my hockey school in Winnipeg this week, and I feel like that's something that I really take wholeheartedly, that it is my job to help the instructors and to teach them as much. But I also get just as much from them. I mean, that's why it's been 25 years of running it, is I just feel like they just give me so much. And but it's something that I want to share with the kids too on day one, that it isn't your job to get better as a hockey player here. It's your job to make other people's experience better. And just simply that as a human, I love that. So the next question from that was, how did you develop the themes for this year in particular? I think it was fire this year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so how did you come up with that? Does that get input from other people, or do you come in with sort of the generic theme and then it gets built on by the staff, or how does that work?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I try and think of something that's, you know, as we all do, something that's unique that we think might leave an impression. Oftentimes it's you know, maybe there's just a small idea that kind of pops up. So going back to last summer, because I'll include that as part of this process, our theme was Everglow. And the Everglow idea came to me by chance. My assistant coach for the Pandas, who is an apprentice coach, a mentee, actually, doing her master's at the U of A, she brought this to me. And it was like, whoa. So this is, I encourage you guys to look this up. It's Everglow : the winning, it's by Ledbetter, Chris Ledbetter, I think is his name. He's I got it written down here somewhere. Good thing this isn't TV, eh, Sammy? Because this would not go over well on TV.
This is us every Thursday morning, just so you know. This
okay.
This is actually much better facilitated and run than normally. Normally we're half on mute half of the time, so this is really great.
Okay, it's Brett Ledbetter, What Drives Winning. So he's got a series of motivational sports psychology stuff that's really cool. But this particular video was about Everglow and Sabrina Ionescu, who is an Oregon basketball player, an outstanding basketball player that's playing pro, and you know, she broke a bunch of records in the NCAA. Anyway, so I happened to, this was introduced to me, this video, and it just automatically, I thought, this is the next theme, because really it's about, well, the quote is that you'll see as you watch the video is, walk through the darkness and be the sun on the next traveler's journey. So that is automatically kind of brings you to, and the video is about, I'm here to help everybody else succeed. That's my job, not to be there to succeed myself, you know. And so then what I did in this situation is I brought that to the group. First of all, I asked, okay, what are your themes? What are your ideas? You know, is there anything that you got there? They shared them, and then I shared this one idea that I was really excited about. The wolf thing, by the way, came from Tara Watchhorn. Just a quote that she really liked, and we built on that. We pulled that out, and it turned into this huge, crazy, which is, I'm going to get to that, but so we talked about this Everglow. We showed the Everglow video to the team. Well, I showed it first to the coaches, and then we just started talking about how we could incorporate this into our journey. And then, you know, so that's kind of how things always often work for me. Either it's an idea by a coach, or it's some kind of a small idea that I bring forward. All of the values and the stuff that I've talked about always exist, and those are always things that I'll want to ensure are embedded in these themes. But really, it's throwing it back out to the group, and not just the coaches. So you get the medical staff in contributing, and the equipment manager, and you know, next thing you know, it's crazy how everything just starts to, it's like divine intervention. I'm not a religious man, but I am a spiritual one, I think. And it's just, things start to happen, and it's crazy. And you start to, you know, the more you build it, and the more you keep coming back to it, and keep repeating it, and keep modeling it, and keep it in the players' minds, and this in the coach's minds, the more it starts to become a life of its own. And that's what happened with this team. So fast forward to 2022, we didn't want to do the Everglow theme, although that was introduced to the majority of those players in the first camp. But we wanted to do something similar, and so we just drew from Walk Through the Darkness and Be the Sun and The Next Traveler's Journey, but we called it Be the Light.
Sorry to interrupt, Howie, do you mean that it was introduced when the World Championships got canceled? Like that was a different group of people? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it was most of the same players. Yeah, but last summer, right?
Right. So as if it was a separate World Championship. So you kind of separated the two. Okay. Gotcha.
Yes, that was canceled, and then we redid the selection camp. So we brought a lot of those kids back together. So they had already experienced that, and so we wanted to change it a little bit, and we just basically called it Light. Sitting with Tara Watchhorn and Vicky Sanahara, again, just spitballing, because that's the funnest part, is just to kind of see what we can come up with. And I can't remember if it was Tara or Vicky, but she said, what about like a campfire? Because the thing that I've drawn from the senior national team and Gina and Troy and the work that they've done, particularly Gina, is her vision is a very, like it's a nourishing environment. We want people to come in and we want them to feel like there's warmth there. We want them to feel like they can breathe, is a term that she's used. And you could see that with the senior national team, right? When you watch them play, that was a team they could breathe and they were enjoying being in the moment. And it was incredibly inspiring for me to watch what they had done. And I had a chance to help at one of the camps 2 Januaries ago. And it was just, the environment was just something like I had never experienced at a Hockey Canada senior team environment. I've been in a few, but it was just, whoa, like this is something new. So that inspired us. We talked a little bit about that. And then it was like, okay, this is our warmth. This is our campfire. What do you think about when you think about a campfire? It's a bunch of people sitting in a circle and you invite people in to be warm and to engage in conversation and, all of this. So that's kind of where the fire thing came from. And we brought the campfire, that popped in a couple of times throughout the course of the journey, but fire was kind of that key image. And then we broke that down into three elements: oxygen, breathing, being able to breathe in the environment you're in. And there was some key words attached to that. The next one was fuel. The next one was heat. This is like in a pyramid. And the final one was your spark as an individual. What do you bring? What's your fire? So that's kind of how it came to be. And then, like I said, along the way, so Jamie, our massage therapist, couldn't be there in the end because he got COVID, but he thought, hey, I'm a fireman. I'm going to send some fireman helmets. So that became 2 fireman helmets. So for each team, that became the hardest worker of the game, or the one that sparked everybody or lit their fire or whatever it was. So we had 2 helmets that our equipment manager, Andrew, attached Hockey Canada paraphernalia to, and it was just like it all kind of came together. And then Jamie couldn't be there. By the way, Jamie was going to give a little bit of a talk on his being a fireman and the importance of working as a team and all that stuff. But it just, everybody contributed to it, and it just became something that is indescribable. And so that's the part that there's no recipe. It's just the desire to have people contribute. And so, and in so doing, you build something beautiful, this masterpiece, the group does, but you're also, as the guy who's trying to, stimulate the building of this environment, those people are there with you, right? They're connected, like there's pure buy-in because they see how important you feel it is for them to contribute to it. So now there's this connection that goes beyond words, and so that's the same kind of thing. And so when you have that in your staff, that filters out to the players, and of course they send that love to the players. And so now so the buy-in for our team, off-ice buy-in, 100%. Never experienced anything like it in my life. The buy-in on the ice was a little bit tougher, and that comes back to the skill stuff. You know, they're all so skilled that they're like wild horses, and we're trying to let them go, but it kind of helped them work together so they weren't all going in different directions.
You talked about there being no recipe, but this is exactly a recipe, which I love. But Gord talked about sort of a hierarchy of the fire, so that the oxygen being at the bottom, and when there was setbacks, always going back to the bottom. Can you kind of explain that pyramid to us, and when you introduce the different levels? Sure.
Yeah, so every time we have a theme, we figure out a way to break it into 3 phases roughly, or 3 or 4 phases, depending on what our journey looks like and the path looks like, what the schedule looks like. So we kind of, so it was a pyramid. I stole that from John Wooden, because if you've studied John Wooden, then you know that the base of his pyramid of success are fundamental values and our behaviors that are all relate to effort to help the team and relationships, really. And that without that base, if there's one block missing in that base, then everything crumbles. You can't have success, which, by the way, isn't winning. Success is being the best you can be when it matters the most, or whatever it is, right? So our foundation was oxygen, as I mentioned. Again, lifted that from Gina. You know, that idea came from her, and we wanted an environment that players could feel comfortable, because we also know that with female athletes, you know, they will perform when they know that they're accepted. So it was important to us that everybody felt like they were coming into that warm fire. So that foundation, that oxygen, so they could breathe, was acceptance, trust, and freedom to be. So you're free to be whoever you are. We're not going to try and change you. We appreciate who you are. We're going to accept you regardless of who you are. We're going to accept your individuality and embrace it. And you can trust us. That's what we tried to build. That was the foundation. That's what we encouraged all of the players to be, to help each other feel this acceptance, level of acceptance, and hence a freedom to be. The next level was our fuel. And so the fuel was passion, love, and knowledge. So we felt, okay, if we had this base and everybody felt free and they could breathe, that your passion for why you play the game is, you know, you can go there. You can't go there when you feel like everyone's kind of teasing you, or you're not accepted, and it kind of squelches your passion, right? And we saw that with the senior team again. Like they had this oxygen and this ability to breathe, so you could see their passion come out in the game, and for each other, and you know, and everybody's why is different. And so we talk a lot about that. But so passion, love, so that's the interconnectedness, like loving each other. You don't have to like each other, but you got to love each other. We got to get to that point. And then the knowledge was, we got to learn. So the oxygen was the first part of camp, and building that, by the way, and this is really important too, sort of lifted this from the national team as well, that those other 17 players that wouldn't make the team, we worked really hard in that oxygen piece, so that first week, to help them understand that they are as significant in this process as anybody moving forward that might eventually vie for a gold medal. That their input or their involvement is as critical, just as critical as anybody else's. So we worked really hard at that. And I always get a little weepy when I think about this, but how I knew that we had done the job of making that happen was when we did our releases after that first 5 or 6 days. And one of the players who I usually have a pretty good read on players' personalities, but one of the players that I never really could quite figure out, one of those players that, has she got attitude? Like, I just can't really figure this kid out. Anyway, so we made a point, Gina and I, everybody goes out to the bus. I've never liked the Hockey Canada way that they go off and they leave, and then the rest of the group never gets to see them again. It's like they just disappear, they're canceled. Never really liked that, so we talked about how we could make that more inclusive and try and help them feel like they're still part of it. And so anyway, one of the things that we did was Gina and I went to the bus after everybody was on there and just talked with them. We gave them a card, we gave them a match, because it's their light, it's their fire, that this is an indicator that you're not done. Like, this is so you still have your journey to go, and that journey may bring you back here. But again, it's just, and the card just spoke to how significant their involvement was. But the one kid that I couldn't figure out, back of the bus, she puts up her hand, she goes, "Coach, you guys go win a fucking gold medal." And it was like, man, like, Kate, I know we achieved what we meant to achieve, because this one kid who I wasn't sure about just basically said, and then that provided an opportunity for me to take it back to the girls that were celebrating together and say, this is what just happened. So it reinforced the idea that everybody's important and we all have a role, and that you guys are, and so anyway, so we had this great group that that was the oxygen part, the fuel part, so we could build on that, the passion, the love for each other, the knowledge. So we're going to be coaching you, we're going to be giving you knowledge, you got to accept that, try and pull it in, you've got to try and, absorb as much as you can in a very short period of time. And then the next level was if we could do that, if we could bring your why, if you can bring your why, if you can show and demonstrate love for everybody, and if they can do the same for you, if we can build that knowledge, then we'll be able to bring the heat, was the next level. And so the heat was energy, positivity, and hard work. Energy, positivity, hard work. If you have passion, if you know that the people around you love you, if you've got the knowledge, then you're going to have energy, you're going to be positive, and you're going to be able to work hard, because who can't work hard on the thing that they love the most, right? And for the people that they love the most. So that was the next level. And then the final one again was, that kind of morphed over time, but it was your spark. So what do you bring, and bring it. So now is your opportunity to perform, basically. So that was the fire.
It's like a real master class in how to build culture, which is incredible. So thank you for sharing all of that. I think you had all of us in tears too. That's probably the hardest thing for a coach, is to go through those moments, but reflecting back and knowing that you did the best you could in that situation. And maybe that's good fodder for all the coaches that will be listening to this, to allow the girls to have a little bit of a voice in that setting, and to leave them with something positive too, which is incredible that you guys thought to do that. I think back to the meetings with you and Vicky and Tara, and Vicky was one of the best leaders that I ever played with, but also one of the funniest. I can't imagine, you were probably in hysterics half the time. She was just so creative with her, and her line mates used to, whoever she played with, she would create some sort of theme for the line. Yeah. So she might be Sidious, Altius, Fortius, or they might have been Teletubbies, or they might have been whatever. But they always had something with their line that they would come back to, and they were always in their own little silo of like just fun and play. And she just made everything easier? I mean, you talked about being in the Hockey Canada culture now. It certainly wasn't always like that. And there was some stressful times back in the day. And it was always Vicky that made it a lot lighter for the rest of us and made the journey a lot easier. So you're very lucky to have somebody like her. But I am curious, and for all of the coaches that will be listening, I know Wally has his hand up, but I'll let you ask your question 1 second, Wally. But it is, when everything's going great, this sounds amazing. This sounds so great. But specifically, this particular World Championships, you had a setback of 7-0. And I know it's not about winning, but clearly it wasn't going the way the girls wanted it to, or the coaching staff wanted it to. Things just were not clicking at that moment. What specifically did you go back to, and how did you kind of rein things in? I know it's not ultimately about winning for you, but it is about having success and being the best you can on the ice at the time. So, yeah, did you take a moment? I mean, what were your thoughts, and how did you sort of manifest that to your team to then move on from there with these really young girls? I mean, this is not easy at that age.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think it kind of goes back to, like, I believe that if you can build that foundation and build that culture, then it becomes easier. It's easier, you know, the forming, norming, storming, performing stuff, right? Forming, storming, norming, performing. Anyway, yeah, I think that's it. And showing them as we were building that pyramid, we showed them that we're going to have conflict. And it's not always going to be a perfect trajectory towards a gold medal. That there's going to be peaks and valleys. And when we go through the valleys, the teams that have a less healthy culture they won't be able to get through that, and then they'll implode. The teams that have a healthy culture will be able to get through that, and they'll become stronger for it. So that's where, I know you asked this question initially, Sammy, that's where we showed them that when things aren't going well, we got to come back to the foundation of our pyramid. Acceptance, trust in the system, trust in the program, trust in each other. Because that's one of the things that we found, is that everybody was trying to do everybody else's job. All these players are so skilled. And they're such great kids. Like, to me, their on-ice behavior wasn't selfish. It was, they were so concerned about helping the team win. And they're so used to carrying the teams, their club teams, that's how, in their mind, they needed to help. They needed to go out and you know, dangle and do the things that they were used to doing that would help them get a goal and help their team succeed. And so we had to come back to, that was part of it, is they had to trust the process. They had to trust the coaches' information that we're giving them, the knowledge that we had shared with them. The game plan. They had to trust that. They had to trust in each other, because they're also trying to do each other's job defensively, because they didn't really trust each other on the ice. They trusted each other off the ice. And then the acceptance, and you know what happens when things start going wrong is we start to point fingers. So now we're not accepting others, we're blaming them and saying, well, this is what you are, so that's why we're losing. And so we came back to the foundation, and we told them, let's go back to the foundation, right? Like, this is where we need to be. Part of that is you guys need to believe or trust that the coaches are making decisions, and we're giving you information because we have the experience and we know what's going to help you. After those two losses, I have to admit that I was thinking, okay, did we miss something? Are we going in the wrong direction? Is there something that do we need to change, right? Because you always go there as a coach. What do we need to change? And so for me personally, I was able to draw from Vicky and Tara. And again, this is the power of others, right? And they said, no, we can stay the same. We can keep going. and in doing what we're doing. And together we came up with, we had to have as another coach that I met some time ago, a come to Jesus discussion with him, because we believed, like my internal belief is that you'll always, well, you create an environment that is right for success when it's a positive environment, like the ones we've been talking about, is positive culture. We had that, but I think what we were missing was that one piece that to help tie the two together, that if you want to reach your goal, which is winning a gold medal at the highest level, ultimately, if you want to reach your goal, you're going to have to come back to the foundation. You're going to have to trust us. We told some stories. This is the night after, I think, our US loss, that we felt were relevant to the situation about certain individuals. I know Tara has shared some messaging about her experience with the national team, and she wasn't always she was able to play a role, like a seventh defenseman kind of a role. I think Vicky had a similar kind of discussion. In fact, she told a story about Geraldine Haney. So she was able to draw from her experiences. I told a couple of Pandas hockey stories, one of which was a story that came out of our game against Wally Kozak's Dinosaurs, UC Dinosaurs, because that was a crazy game. Do you remember that one, Wally? I don't know, was it 0-0 going into the 10-minute mark of the third period or something like that? And then Calgary got a goal, and it was just nobody was scoring any goals. It was this defensive battle. I think it was actually later in the game, might have been 6 minutes left in the game, and probably Dana Antel, I think it was Dana Antel, scored a goal, and then you could just feel our whole bench sag, okay, we're not going to win this game. And if not for our captain, who made a personal decision that she was going to go out and she's going to make a difference, and scored the goal the next shift, and now it was 1-1. Right, so and then she came back in and she screamed at everybody, "We're not going to lose this game!" Slammed the door, and you could feel everybody's energy come back up. So it was just anyway. So I wanted to tell that just because we were playing against Wally. So that wasn't coaching, Wally. I was being out coached totally. That was all my captain. But yeah, so it was just kind of coming back to that, Sammy, and trying to get them back to the basics. We had to be more simple. We couldn't outskill the States. They were so strong. Their skating, their passing, the way they moved the puck, it was so strong. But we knew that we had to take advantage of and we had to exploit the not the weaknesses that they had, but areas that we felt we could exploit, and the players had to buy into that. And I felt we needed those 3 games, those 2 games prior to that last game. So we needed to finish where we did. So again, this is karma maybe. We needed to finish so that we could play an extra game against the Slovaks, build some offensive confidence, refine our team play, and then played against Finland, and that wasn't an easy game, and it was important for us to kind of get through that. But we started to see that they were doing the things that we were asking them to do, so they're starting to play a team game. So I think, again, things happen for a reason. I almost lost sight of it, and I needed my coaches. I needed to reach and to lean on the people around me to help. And then, of course, Troy helped. He was our coach mentor, and he gave some feedback, and that was invaluable. But I think together, and because we could come back to that foundation, and they had that strength already in the dressing room, I think it was maybe easier to come out of and go in the way that we did, as compared to if that foundation wasn't as strong.
I'm going to open it up to much smarter coaches than me on this call for some questions. But first, I just want to talk about the come to Jesus moment I think we've all had as athletes or coaches. And one in particular, I don't know if I've ever shared it with, I don't know if Wally, you were part of the 2000 team in Mississauga, but for the first time ever in a World Championship final, we were down 2-0 going into the third period. And between periods, I thought, I'm going to be the first goalie ever to lose in a World Championship final. I'm going to be the first one to lose to the Americans. And I remember sitting there looking at each of the girls in the dressing room, just thinking what a privilege it is to be here. That even if we lose, what an incredible experience this has been. And just having that knowledge and that thought, I think, propelled me to then go out and do the best I could and realize that, you know, I can't go down and score any goals. There's nothing I could do. And of course, we had some pretty skilled players and ended up winning in overtime. But that you have to have those moments. I think you have to sort of acknowledge, if everything is just going hunky-dory the whole time, you're never really thinking about just how fortunate and lucky we are to get to play this great game, and that at the end of the day, we get to do what's fun and we get to enjoy it, and that not every moment is going to be enjoyable, but certainly the people that we get to meet along the way, the adventures we get to take together, that's what you take out of it. And maybe I shouldn't have been taking that after a second period in a World Championship final. I should have been focused on that at that moment. But I think it does help to reflect in those moments and to lean on the people around you. I was lucky to sit beside one of my best friends, Jennifer Bottrell, who is just one of the most positive people ever. And on one side, and then Delaney Collins on the other, who often is not. And the three of us having that conversation and sort of coming to sort of a confluence of agreement that this is pretty incredible, and what can we all do to go out and play the best we can this period. So anyways, I just wanted to tell that story. I know you coach Delaney. She's a great friend of mine, and has lived with my husband and I over the years at different times playing in Toronto. And I just, you know, appreciate so much the different characters and people that I got to meet along the way and got to be influenced by. So anyways, I will open it up to much smarter people on this call. Thank you so much, Howie, for sharing so much of the process. I'm sure lots of people will have some questions about it. And I'll open it up first to our CEO, Wally Kozak.
Great job, Howie. Before asking you a question, I want to share my thoughts. And what you have done is reinforced in my mind the importance of emotional intelligence side of coaching. The X's and O's, they are important, but they aren't going to be the difference maker. So any coach, however way they choose to go, that can build the relationships and the trust, can transmit belief and achieve success, and you did that. When I watched the skill level of the girls at practice, and I saw your first two practices, Howie, you took defensive skating to another level with excellent tactical skating drills. And your practice was focused on one-on-one D-zone cover. Now, I didn't come to all the practices, but I saw the talent of the kids and the passing of the kids, and I thought, gee, they got to focus on offense more. Anybody can play defense. And I watched the under-17s last night. Your team was talented, and I'll tell you, these kids were so talented, I would be afraid to coach them. So the point is, regardless of how the approach you take, the most important thing to remind all the coaches out there is creating a culture that's positive. And you did that. And I'm curious about, you mentioned the player in that one game who stood up and sort of established a mindset for the team to take over and have success. And I'm curious about everybody here, whether it's a player on your team or even you yourself in that moment, being able to say something that impacted them. Is there anybody else in terms of your coaching or players on your team that internally provided the sort of impetus to change the mindset to achieve success? And how you can think back to your Panda teams and even other national teams. So anybody, it's those moments that come up that just flip the switch of belief.
sorry, is that a question for me or is that?
Yeah, that's you. Yes, you, Howie.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe
Okay.
specifically answer this team, because
Yeah.
a lot of us watched that U18 championship, but then other, I'm sure, national and Panda teams. And then maybe, Wally, throw it back to you. I'm sure you've had so many moments like that in your career where you've seen players do that as well.
Yeah. So I'll say that, you know, for me, I think there may have been one or two moments over my career that maybe I've been able to do that, but I think it's far more powerful if you do the work at the front end and you create the space for the people to lead in the moment. I think so your players primarily, your coaching staff. So Vicky had so as I said, kind of things morph over that. Your theme morphs a little bit, and we felt that, okay, we're not blue collar enough. This is actually the term that Vicky brought up. We need to be. So you talked about her keeping things light. Absolutely, she's a genius at that, but she's also passionate, right? And so I moved out of the way and I let her talk about blue collar. You know, and so that became one of our terms over the latter part of that tournament was, we got to be a blue collar team. And if we're going to be successful, we have to be a blue collar team and play in blue collar way. So I think we started doing that. And I don't necessarily, I think, you know, the States, if we're looking at the final game, they would have wanted to go toe to toe skill wise. That's their game. Ours is maybe, you know, I know this is probably speaking not necessarily the group, but because you guys, you know, you're very innovative and creativity is huge and all that stuff, but we had to play a more Canadian game if we wanted to be successful in that moment. That's where we kind of came to. And
can you kind of describe blue collar? So do you mean like gritty or like extra? Like what does that mean to you?
Yeah, definitely purposeful contact. So we had to slow them down. So we had to contact them more. I felt like we did that. We had to just play simple and establish a forecheck. It sounds so cliche, but we needed to get the puck behind their defense. We felt that the States didn't want to play in their zone. Of course, who wants to play in their zone? But particularly them, they thrive through the neutral zone and the offensive zone. So we wanted to get it behind them. We wanted to establish a forecheck, create turnovers, and get pucks to net, right? And it's a simple way to play the game, but in the moment, that's what we needed to do to find success, we felt. But again, just kind of getting back to your original, it's creating the space for others to stand up and lead. And yeah, I could probably think of one or two moments if I had a better memory and maybe a little bit more time, but I'm sure that there would have been one or two opportunities where some players shared some of their feelings too. I just can't really.
Well, it might not have been in a full group too. Like a defenseman turns to their D partner and says something really profound. History doesn't acknowledge that, right? That doesn't it's the history teller gets to tell it in the way that they want it to. But I'm sure, Wally, you probably had some ideas in mind of times that happened over your career.
With Tom Malloy on, I don't know that Tom took over the state women's team. They were halfway through the season, and he was struggling to make the playoffs. And we were playing the Nate team, and they were almost an undefeated first place team. And I traveled to Nate for that last game, and I got to be on the bench a couple of times with Tom. And in that game, I believe it was going into overtime, and I stayed back and talked to the backup goalie. And I asked her what she thought. And what she said to me was like, wow. I said, would you say that to the team?
Wally, backup goalies are often the smartest, right?
Yeah. Well, they see things. She's been on the bench for both games. She's a part of the team, and she expressed herself to me. And when Tom asked me to give my two bits in the dressing room, I deferred to her. And Howie, she talked about, we're a blue collar team. We got to get back to our game. We got to play our game. And I thought it flipped the switch a little bit to the players putting together. And I also watched Tom manage the bench and get the right people out there. I wouldn't have managed the bench that way and as well as he did. So he had a tremendous intuition for that. And sometimes assistant coaches are really good at helping you with line combinations. And I've found that over the years, I've worked with the assistant coaches that just gave me input that opened my mind up to other possibilities to make better decisions with. But that's an example. I've had a lot of cases where luck or intuition have occurred with me in terms of spur of the moment things that have come up causing me to make a decision. But the underlying factor to all the success I've had, Howie, like you, is that philosophy of everybody being valued and feeling a part of a team and contributing and not being feeling less than others, feeling valued. And the biggest problem in minor hockey, and I even think at competitive levels, even at the NHL, is not everybody feels valued. Not everybody has a role and feels part of the team. The trust, the relationships between the staff and the organizations are dysfunctional. And I know, even though we may have won the gold medal in Salt Lake City, we were a pretty dysfunctional staff. And I credit Sovichov for being able to just filter everything through and make the correct decisions at the right time, and allowing intervention, which I made a few times, and suggestions. But the biggest suggestion of all, Howie, to my coaching with the national team was I would not do it if they didn't agree to play everybody in all situations in the first half of the season and create 10 power play people and 10 penalty kill people in the second half of the season. I think that was the recipe for success for 3 of the consecutive gold medals. Everybody felt valued. The power of the players to play the game and make their own decisions. I can go back to Vicky being on the ice. The last 7 seconds in the second period, Sammy, and that I think they were aligned in Ontario together, and they had a little bit of a huddle. They won the draw, and I think it was Brisson wheeled the puck behind the net and threw a stretch pass.
Becky Keller. It was Becky Keller.
Okay, Becky, that's right,
Yeah.
Keller. Stayed on side, scored a goal with 2 seconds left. So the players came up with this tactical play on their own. And I sort of told them when, we had face-off plays, and I said, well, you guys make up your own. Just make up your own, do your thing. That was during the season. But when they did that, I went over to Danielle as an assistant. When you score a goal in the last minute of a period, that's like worth 2. And I thought 1 second's got to be worth 3. So I went over to Danielle and I said, Danielle, I just repeated the importance of that goal, the impact it would have, how it would make us put the Americans down a little bit. And I said, let's not change anything on forecheck, because most teams will sit back and trap and not force. Just don't say anything. Don't even change anything. Let them play the same way. And that's what we did. And it ended up, I felt valued as a coach, but I had to have a sense of feel about intervention and the right stuff, right amount, right time, because I can be a little bit imposing. And that was what I enjoy assisting more than head coaching, because the weight is on your shoulders, and Howie, I really respect hearing what you said about your ability to engage not just the coaching staff, but to utilize them and all other staff members. So I really better understand now why you could turn around what appeared to be an impossible situation. So it was kudos to you. It was just absolutely amazing. And I think that I'm looking forward to the future of female hockey now, because I think the mindset and approach that Sammy, that we lived through, you lived through, and now I think they're providing a healthier environment, a better culture for players coming in. I still believe a vision is very important, and the vision is something that, number one, is the culture and how you do it, and the vision for the way the game is changing and how we have to adapt to it. And I believe that we've got to be better tactically and in terms of team play, and learn from what the men are doing. So Howie, when I had my heart attack in 2007 and returned to Hockey Canada, I revised the curriculum, and you know about that because we did the D-zone walkthrough on a tennis court that Sammy's talked about. That was in the curriculum, and everything was all defense. But after the heart attack, I saw the females just get so much better. They were ready to do more things offensively. So I basically revised the curriculum and edited video from female and male NHL clips of stuff that they were ready to do in the future. And we're not there yet on the male side or on the female side. The male side appears to be, I don't know, it's because the boys are so skilled, they don't want to distract them from playing that way, but there's a balance now of allowing for that degree of free play and creativity and decision making so they can make plays together with the puck. And the best defense is an offense, having the puck in the first place. So that's just something philosophically over many years in the FEPRO program I wanted to share with you, because I'm watching, when I watched the entire tournament, I watched the World Championships, and I watched the B pool side, even though they were trying to qualify. And I know Thomas Pacino is over there with the Czechs, and Carla's taken over. And I think that line of freeing them up to play, the Czechs amazed me in that they were able to be tied with 10 minutes left with the Americans.
Oh, at the Olympics, yeah, in the quarterfinal. That was quite the game.
So they played well without the puck, but they played better than anybody with it, given the fitness level and the talent level of the team. So my philosophy of approaching the game moving forward at the highest level would be to advise the branches and the coaching staffs to just let the reins come free, let them think and make plays for themselves. And I thought when you played Finland the second time, I saw many completed passes. I thought they were on track. They were back to playing together with the puck. We had the puck a lot more often. And we played defense by having the puck in their end a lot more often. So there's tactics and strategies and engaging the defensemen and involving them in the offense and being able to interchange positions that the men appear to be doing. And I think the game's got a ways to go yet, but it's going to be great. And I'm hoping around long enough to watch it progress. So I'm wondering, Tim and Mike, in your coaching experience, and I don't care what age group it is, what level it is, have you had examples where your assistants or a player or even yourself, the light bulb went on and you said something that made an impact and made a difference?
Well, I have one instance in mind. I was a head coach for a 12U team, and we were in a weekend tournament, and we're a lower level team, a B level team. And we were in a weekend tournament, and we had lost the first two games, and we just didn't play very well. And I don't tend to talk a lot to the kids before a game, but I had some assistants that liked to talk a fair amount, and I told the assistants before our third game that we were not going to talk to the kids at all. We were going to leave the locker room and let them handle it, because and so that's what we told the kids. So I told them, I said, you guys have heard enough from us. We're going to wait for you guys out in the hallway. When you're ready to take the ice, come on out. And almost immediately, one of the kids came out and said, Coach, can we have your whiteboard? I said, yeah, sure. And I don't know what they did, but they came out and they won the next game. And so that was great. So we had the fourth game, and the kids were just getting to the rink, and I was hanging out watching the game that was on the ice. And one of the dads came over to me. He said, that was awesome. He said, are you going to do that again? I said, yeah. I said, maybe. I don't know what I didn't commit to it. But anyway, I turned around and go in the locker room, and one of the assistants was already in there talking to him. So I lost the opportunity to do it again. But I just sometimes for me, it's better just to let the kids do it. And
Tim,
Howie,
it's really hard to not want to listen, isn't it? Like, you want to give it over to the kids. I know that when I was GM of the Furies, we had a space you could walk in, but the walls didn't go all the way up. And often I just wanted to go and listen to hear what they were saying to each other. But you really got to just leave them. But you want to know. I mean, it's especially when you win. It's like, what magical sauce did they provide that helped? But good for you to just kind of walk away.
Howie, I have to share the story about. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I just before I had to jump off, I just wanted to thank Howie for taking the time to talk with us today. I'm just blown away by the whole thing. So I'm in. You might have not heard my introduction at the beginning of the call, because you might have been disconnected. So I'm in the States, youth involved with youth hockey in the Philadelphia area. So I watched both the 18U games versus the US. And one thing that I learned from you is I should have a black Sharpie in my pocket and put my initials on my water bottle cap, so it doesn't get mixed up with everybody else's. I think I saw you do that at the beginning of the final game. But after the preliminary game, I'm thinking, well, that game probably didn't go the way the Canadians wanted it to go. And then after the final game, I'm thinking to myself, well, what just happened here? And I really, at that point, thought to myself, well, I would really like to know, what went on the bench and in the locker room and with the team, and never thinking I'd ever have the chance to actually look inside and see what happened. So I really appreciate Sammy Joe and Wally for and you for taking the time today. And this is just fantastic. I'm going to replay the video and take notes.
Before I go to Mike about his coaching experiences, Howie, I had to, because it reinforces the importance of positivity. Over the years, and I don't know that you've gotten involved in delivering clinics, but I sure did. They were born from the Clare Drake era. Dave King, George Kingston, Clare Drake out west. We were curriculum writers, providers, and we did a lot of the clinic. And Hockey Alberta's taken it to another level in educating course conductors, meeting in the spring before the season to be educated better at coaching coaches to get certified to coach. And I have to share this story because it's the Sharks are about lifelong learning, Howie. And this is a lifelong learning experience for me as a young, up and coming coach, having national team playing experience and working with Dave King. Now I'm at a course conductors conference. I'm coaching high school football, wrestling, and track. And we have a course conductor present on the importance of positivity. And he handed out a sheet to us. I think it was 99 ways to say good job. And he explained the impact of positive energy. And I have to relate that handout to my experience going to a teachers convention and hearing a human resource office manager speak to 1,000 teachers about the same thing and explain the science of the power of positive thinking and the effect of negative body language, frowns, whatever. And we went through a series of arm tests. So when I had that 99 page sent to me, it was like the 5 light bulbs went off. I ran back to Hockey Canada and I did the arm strength experiment at their offices at the Saddle Dome with the staff. I was so excited about it. I incorporated it with all my phys ed classes because I had created sports psych grade 10, 11, and 12 units. And that became a part of it. But when the clinic ended, the course conductor's clinic ended, I took the sheet to football practice. And I tell this story, and I do the same thing at coaching clinics today. And I told my football staff, we had positional coaches, we had the group, we did a drive bag drill where 4 units competed, one player holding the bag, one waiting to set it up, and then the line of players rotating in to pound that bag down the field, given the technical information to do it right. And we always barked out the teaching points. Arch the neck, bull the neck, drive, don't dive. And we got pretty good at it. But this time I gave them that sheet. And I said, coaches, all I want you to do is read from this sheet. Nothing else. And they looked at me like I was crazy. I said, no, this is what I picked up on the weekend. I want to experiment. At the 25-yard line, without any technical feedback, everything was great. The 50, it was better than it had ever been, and the bags were getting really pounded. 75, I couldn't believe it. They were starting to cheer. When they crossed the far goal line, they were high-fiving each other like they won the Rose Bowl. And I told this story at hockey clinics, and I hand out the sheet. And it was a 2-day clinic. One coaching staff came back, told me they used the sheet on the bench, nothing else. And they ended up beating a team that had beaten them 5-1 before, that they had never beaten at all. And so the power of positivity supersedes doing everything correct technically. And I just thought it was worth sharing that story. Now, Mike, you've coached a lot of different teams, different ages. And can you share any stories like Tim did about that kid? Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I mean, there's a ton, right? But I think the one thing that I've taken just from coaching and when I, I'm a self, I definitely am a coaching clinic geek. I love just going to different clinics, hearing different speakers. Obviously, when I'm in these programs, I think the most impressive thing to me, I was just at the NHL coaches clinic in Montreal last week. And one of the most impressive things in all these kind of clinics is that not only the speakers and the guests that are there are, obviously doing what they do, but they all stick around and listen to whoever's speaking and whoever the guests are. And they're the same people in those rooms. But I think, from your perspective, the one common theme that comes up all the time, and Tim hit on this a little bit as well, right? About your players, allowing your players to just, kind of just you guide them and allow the players to coach themselves and to kind of own these moments. I think was really hard for me as a young coach when I first started coaching to be in that, to not be in the position of controlling every single piece of what they did. And I think certainly, I think that the reason I've had success since my early coaching was only because I've let the ego of me thinking I know everything about coaching and allowing the players to just take what, we're doing the right thing as coaches, as everybody on this call does, with your groups. And if you feel like you're pushing the right buttons, then you allow those players to take ownership. And I know it's cliche, right? But I think you learn more from each player and each season that you have to find these great athletes that just find a way to make, their experience better. And that's something you can't manufacture. It just organically happens because of the environment you've created. So, certainly not one thing, but I think it's just a combination of, the more you get to coach and the more diversity you get to coach in, it just makes you a better, it makes you better suited to work with really anybody you get to be on the ice with. In my case, I mean, obviously you can bring this into any line of work. I just happen to be, in hockey all the time. So it just works out. It just works out well that I get to enjoy, watching all these young athletes that you hope you mentor grow into positions of making these decisions on their own and leading their teams and standing up and doing things you wouldn't think you'd see out of some players. Not controlling them. So that's really, the only thing I could really add. This is a great, I love hearing the, as Tim said, behind the scenes of how coaches push the right buttons. And I think one of the things that we don't ever get is we always see the end result and we don't get to, see the sausage being made and, all this stuff behind the scenes of all these great team building activities. And, it wasn't always, hey, I picked the best 18 players and look, we were successful. How much has to go in, to finding players. I was with the Colorado Avalanche coach last week at a table, just listening to, what was the difference between last year and this year? He's like, nothing. I mean, it was just the way the players decided to take control and build their own destiny and understand, that they had to go through certain situations and circumstances to now get to a place to win. So, a lot of different things, but these are great opportunities, and really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us all for sure.
Yeah,
Now, before
it's my
go to Howie, I wanted Tom Malloy to come in. Tom has coached more years than any of us, and he's coached male and female hockey. Tom, you got to have some stories about those deja vu moments where decisions were made or influenced. Can you share a few?
I'll have to think about that one. But one thing I've been really, really lucky is the last, 8-10 years, Wally's been my mentor. So he helped me with U18 girls, the AAA and AA, and also with the St. Women's team. And he did that energy thing he talked about. He came in and he did that with a couple of my teams there, and it's unbelievable how he just puts his hand down the middle, and all of a sudden they become weak, and he has them looking at each other, and when they smile, nobody can move their arm, and when they frown, their arm goes down like nothing, and it's really they can see it right there, and about the positivity, and as far as those deja vu moments, I think just because when you're around the game so much, you kind of know what works and what doesn't. You get the feeling of something's going wrong here and we have to fix that. And I was like Howie. He had Clare Drake. I had Bob Peters at Bemidji, and he was incredible. He won 13 national championships. They had very similar coaching, and we even played U of A back in the day. We play the Canadian universities all the time, and you know, and he was a one-liner guy. Just didn't talk a whole lot about things, but it was all about. He made us run 10 miles before we were allowed on the ice. We weren't allowed on the ice till October. And that was kind of the theme all the time, was that guy you're playing against. He didn't run 10 miles. And then he had the brilliant idea the next year to go 20 miles, which was, nobody ran in those days. I'm talking 1968, 69. I just remember my inside of my legs being so chaffed because Bemidji's on a lake and it's really humid and you're running there and just raw from trying to, you guys are looking for shortcuts around the lake. Well, there is no shortcut because there's a lake there, but we're still looking because you're delirious. But that was the theme. He had this theme all the time. And that's what I remember. We played Lake Superior State in the national championship, but the week before, 3 of our players were playing on the US national team and they were over in Europe playing in the world championships. And they beat us 2-1 without these guys, our 2 best defensemen and our top scorer. And they hadn't beat us forever. Ron Mason was their coach. And then the next game, they beat us 11-1. They just clobbered us. And we went back to Bemidji, and he didn't say one word about anything. And it's a really long drive. And our practices, we had 3 skates in every practice. He just stopped us, and for 10 minutes, we just skated. And sorry. But everyone knew that we didn't do what we do. So anyways, we go back and we're playing in the national championship in Sault Ste. Marie the next weekend, and they didn't get there for the first game, but we played another team and we won. We won that game, and the team wasn't near as good as Lake Superior State. And they got back at night after our game, and they arrived back. And we're playing in this Puller Stadium, and guys had effigies of these 3 players hanging, with a rope around their neck from the rafters in the stadium. And anyway, we won 7-2. And we always knew what we were about. And I think Howie does that, and I think they're really good coaches. Everybody knows what the team's about. And that's kind of my view on the whole thing.
Tom, your emotion showing through with the love you had for that coach and the influence he's had on you. And that's the kind of relationship I know that Clare has created in the culture with the Bears and Howie with the Pandas. I thought you were going to mention the run around the lake, and there was a player who never did it that was one of your better players.
What happened is the first year there, I got there and this one guy set a new scoring record. And we did that, around the lake 10 miles. And this guy's buddies drive up and they said, we'll drive you a few miles. So he jumped in the car and they drove him a few miles, and I never saw him play. He's an all-time leading scorer. I never saw him play. He wasn't allowed. The coach did not allow him on the ice. And so it was pretty clear to everybody that you're either in or you're out.
And Howie, I wanted Tom to bring that up because I have a Clare Drake story. You can verify it for me. And it's okay if it's not totally true because I tell it every coaching clinic. Number one, I always say to the coaches, you haven't heard of Clare Drake, have you? All we talk about is John Wooden. And I hold Clare in such high esteem, and he's the only coach I know, and Sammy, I don't know if you know this, he has won 2 national championships in different sports in the same season. Back in the day, and he was assisting with the football team, because back in the day, I believe you could play both and coach both. So he was an assistant. And apparently the head coach got sick. So Clare was invited to become the head coach. And the story I heard at the first practice, or one of the early practices, and I see you nodding in agreement. Can you tell a story, Howie?
Well, I'm not sure exactly where you're going, but the story that I do know is that, and again, it speaks to Coach Drake's humility, is that and his willingness to admit. So part of humility is self-awareness. So he was very self-aware, and he knew where his strengths lied, and he knew where his weaknesses lied, or his limitations, and he wasn't afraid to own either, right? And so he felt that it was important at the time for these young men to understand that he didn't know a lot. Like he said, I'm not necessarily a football guy. I'm not going to stand here and tell you guys that I know everything about the game of football, but I have people around me that I know are very good coaches, and they know the game, and together we're going to create an experience for you that's great. So that's the story that I know, and the implication is that in so doing, they were able to see that he didn't necessarily need them to think that he was the great leader, just that he was, or the great man, right? He was just somebody who was going to do his best to help them be the best they could be in whatever way he could. And he was surrounding himself with the power of the others, like I talked about before, surrounding himself with great people.
Yeah.
Is that the same story?
Well, no, it's a more specific detail, but I understand that's the way he would do things. And I don't know if you heard this or not, and I don't know where I heard it, but at one of his early practices as a head coach, the star quarterback dropped an F-bomb, and he sent him off, and he talked to him after the game and says, "We don't do things this way. It's not acceptable." And so the values approach of respecting yourself and being a quarterback and a leader, he really asserted the importance of values early in my mind. And that's the story that I took away from that, but I can understand how a lot of people don't walk the talk. And he walked the talk. And there's a lot of coaches that, they say the right things, but they don't do the right things. And Clare had an uncanny consistency to his approach for coaching. And I think that's what I tell out of that story. Have you heard that quarterback story, that specific incident, or was that before your time?
No, that would have certainly been before my time, but it doesn't surprise me at all. Coach Drake never swore, ever, and he never raised his voice. So he was absolutely. I can definitely see that.
The other thing that really impressed me, he and his wife hosted parties, socials, Christmases, and he paid special attention to players who weren't there or being included. He was so tuned in to everybody being a part of it. And I've heard those stories over time, and everything I've heard about Clare, I bring to coaching clinics. So I tell Clare Drake stories, and I've got more stories now, Howie Draper stories, that are going to move forward if I do any more clinics in my old age. So anybody else got anything to add? Sammy, before, hey, Hell, you're on. I want you to introduce yourself to Howie. You can see here's another gray-haired shark. So he's been there, done that. From Minnesota, done everything, and he'd have grown up in the same era that I grew up in and Tom grew up in, but he's done everything in the States, worked with USA Hockey, and go ahead and introduce yourself, Hal.
Well, I'm Hal. Hi, nice to meet you. Sorry I'm late. I was out watching some hockey, of course, this morning. Summer hockey, summer training camp. But anyways, sounds like you guys had some fun here this morning, and it's a great day here. I just came back from Montana fishing, so kind of wish I was still out there a little bit. But I love hearing Tom's stories about Bemidji. I think those are great. So that's it. That's kind of my story.
Hell, you'll have to share more of the stuff that you produced many years ago. They're absolute gems that have slipped through the cracks, and Hell's forgotten more about hockey.
Wally, I think we should have Hal as the main presenter one of these days, because I would love to hear all of those stories.
Oh,
okay.
I can ask you questions, so you don't have to set up a whole PowerPoint or anything.
oh, that'd be great.
Okay. Howie, I'm going to ask you a question here, and take it where you want. What did you learn from the World Championships?
So what I made a decision. So it's funny because we often coach the way that we are coached, right? I think we all probably could agree with that. And I think one of the things maybe that so Coach Drake, just back to Coach Drake, Coach Drake wasn't a real warm and fuzzy kind of guy. And so well, I would say quite honestly, all of the players that had played for him that I'd talked to would say the same. And so Coach Drake, and just again, speaking to his humility, when I was doing my thesis on his leadership style, I said, I think I maybe should talk to some deniers. I think that's what we called them. And he said, absolutely, you should. So like people that didn't like Coach Drake, because we all love Coach Drake, and we're all impacted by him in such great ways. But there's some out there, of course, and as there would, and maybe even a lot that didn't like Coach Drake and don't have a lot of good things to say about him. But so he just didn't connect really well with his players, to be honest, Wally. And like those parties with Dolly was the connector for him. So those parties were important because we could see that Coach Drake was a human being, because their relationship was the coolest thing that you could ever watch, right? Like you could just tell, okay, so Coach Drake does love, right? Anyway, that's another story. But so I made a purposeful effort, because I'm not really good. I'm pretty introverted actually, and I'm not really great at connecting with players. I think I'm pretty good at as you've mentioned, I have a sense for players and their personalities, and I think I pick up on those pretty fast. But I don't know that I've ever I do a very good job of building relationships, and I know how important that is now. So I made more of an effort this time around than I had in any of my short-term experiences that I've had. I have made more of an effort to connect with the players individually, and it was great. And I don't know, like maybe that was part of. Remember, I said how great this group came together so quickly, and I don't know that maybe just my extra effort at sitting down and talking to somebody, because I just feel automatically they feel I'm going to be awkward and they're not going to like me or whatever it is, right? And just we won't have anything to talk about. I'm just not that kind of. But I pushed myself to do that with every player. I got to know every player's name as quick as I could, and I think it may have had a little bit of a positive. I think my guess is it had a positive impact on their ability to come together a lot sooner than maybe I've experienced in the past. Because as mentioned, this group off ice was more connected than any other team that I've. So maybe my efforts kind of played a part in that. So that's probably the biggest takeaway for me was I gotta step out of my comfort zone. I asked them to do it with each other, but I've never actually. I do it because I'm always out of my comfort zone talking to people one-on-one. On a more personal level, but like you said, I just kind of walked the talk this time around, and I think I'm better for it.
Howie, I'm going to ask you because Hal and Mike are on. I'm not sure if they know the legacy of the University of Alberta program and the Bear side and the Panda side. The legacy of success, to me, is a validation of the culture created by both those programs. And it originated with Clare. And Howie, I've done that mission statement exercise with you. And the group has done it before. We've spent a lot of time on the exercise. And I believe it originated not necessarily with Clare, but who was the original professor, sports psychologist that might have brought it into use? How did it become a part of what you've already do?
So sorry, which?
Well, we did the mission.
Which mission statement?
And you drew the tree.
Oh yeah.
And you had the leaves in the tree, and you had to decide what are the three things you want to accomplish this season.
Yeah.
And you had already done it with your staff. So
Yeah.
I was experimenting with this exercise that I borrowed it and stole it from Dan Morrow and Dr. Bob Corin, who coached the Pee Wee team.
Uh-huh.
I assumed it originated from the U of A with the professor that was acting as a sports psychologist for sporting bodies there.
Yeah. So our tree was 1 year. So that's not something that we come back to every year. And this was something that was specific to the Pandas. And it was a value session that we hold at the start of every year. And our sports psychologist, Fareen Rayani, was the one that kind of led the group to discover this idea. So it was the players really that came up with the tree and the various elements of that tree, being gently guided by by our sports psychologist and me ensuring that I'm kind of plopping in some of those key core values that I think are important too. But generally speaking, that was something the team came up with.
That's great to hear. I was so impressed with that because when we do the exercise, and I do it at every coaching clinic, I have everybody draw a tree. And at the end of the day, I tell them, please remind me about your trees. And the whole idea of the exercise is writing down three things that you want to accomplish and separating them, sorting them into categories in that 45-minute period, a values side and an outcome side. And having them write a mission statement based on values of what they want to accomplish this season. So at the end of the day, when they come back from the ice time, which is usually the end of a 7 or 8 hour day, I ask them to bring up their trees, and the roots are missing on 90% of them, at least 90%. And I equate the roots with the values that, to me, the Pandas and the Bears have. And it could be just something that's disseminated from the values that you live and walk the talk with, and that Clare lived and walked the talk with, and that John Wooden lived and walked the talk with. So kudos to you. And I'm not sure if anybody else has got, Sammy?
Well, Wally, I was thinking, cognizant of Howie's time, we're approaching 2 hours now. I know the Sharks can talk on and on forever. So I think we should maybe thank Howie, and then maybe I'll let you wrap it up, Wally, at the very end. But Howie, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been so incredible to get the behind the scenes, but also to meet you. Every interview that I've seen that you've done has just been so positive, and the girls seem to have a great respect for you, but also for the process as well. So whatever you have done, whether you think there's nothing, there's no recipe behind it, from the outside, we as coaches can see just how hard you work at it and how much it is of value to you. And I think, like all of us, we realize that we stand on the shoulders of greatness, and you certainly have shown that. And you can see just the emotion that it evokes in all of us. So thank you for sharing. And I can't wait to watch what the girls that got to be exposed to your coaches will do in the future, because I think we will see a whole generation of girls and women that will have a great influence on our society. So thank you for that. And Wally, I'll let you conclude.
Okay, I just want to talk a bit about the group, Howie. And I don't know if I explained to you how we came about our name or not, but I'm going to repeat it. We originally, Tim Bothwell, myself, and Thomas Pacina, met for coffee before COVID every Thursday morning and talked hockey, just plain old talked hockey. And most of it was X's and O's. And then a few more people joined, and we've had as many as 10 people come for coffee, and we had to go back to their big open space, and we would stay there for an hour and a half or 2 hours. And Tim and I were always the last to leave and would buy lunch. But with COVID, we decided to go online, and during our meetings, Tim Bothwell came up with the name No Dead Sharks. And it came from a Woody Allen movie. And Woody's girlfriend had asked him, "What do you think of our relationship?" And Woody in the movie said, well, it's sort of like a shark. If it's not swimming, it's not moving forward, it's not breathing, it's dying. So Tim bought aluminum cups. I don't have mine here. Does anybody have one they can hold up? I don't know if you've got yours with you, Sammy, but everybody.
I'm in Winnipeg right now, so no, I don't have it here.
Everybody has their cups, and it's all about lifelong learning. It's not about knowing what I know. It's learning from one another and others. So it's, to me, my mantra is everything we do has got to be for the good of the game. And I believe the game can affect society. That's what Father Bauer wanted sports to do. So he went to another level, being a priest. He saw the holistic value of what sports could do. And I think my most important season of playing hockey ever was 1 year with Father Bauer and those unbelievable athletes and student athletes. It just affected my approach playing and definitely teaching and coaching the philosophy. So Howie, it was terrific to have you on, and we hope you join us. Just pop in and listen in. We're hoping to have Gardner McDougall on, but hell, you be prepared next time if we don't get a guest on, because Sammy's going to have questions for you later.
Wally, it can't be this Thursday because this is my camp in Winnipeg. So don't get Hal this Thursday, because I want to hear him, because he's on all the Sharks calls.
Now listen, next Thursday I'm going to my hometown to a 50-year reunion of the high school class.
Is that Blenheim? Where are you from in Saskatchewan?
Wadena, Saskatchewan.
Wadena. Nice.
And I'm looking forward to the trip. It's where my wife was buried and where I'm going to be buried, and it's a real emotional return there, but I still regard it as home.
Are some of your kids going with you?
Nope, I'm driving out myself. I'm dropping my dog off with my daughter in Blairmore so they can look after it. And I've got my daughter in Calgary that's going to look after the cat while I'm gone. So, and listen, I'm going to the U17 game tonight and going to sit with Dean Seymour, Howie, who speaks very highly of working with you. And I'm looking forward to it because, you know, I have thoughts about this offensive focus that we need to go to, and so does he, because that's what they do. He's a skill specialist, and coaches have to win. And I'm just wondering if the best offense wins or the best defense wins. So it may be a combination of both, and we're discovering that. So thank you so much for coming on, everyone. I really appreciate it. If I'm not going to be on next week because I'm in Wadena, but I'll definitely see if somebody will moderate that. We don't like to take a week off, but we'll see what happens, and I'll try to communicate with somebody to.
You could maybe have Tim do it and talk about NHL free agency or something, because I feel like we haven't had an NHL discussion in a while.
That's right. The boys will want to do that.
There you go.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Away from hiking in the Grand Canyon or anything, but he's obviously spending a lot of time with his wife camping and hiking. So, okay, everybody.
Well, Wally, all the best to you too. We'll be thinking of you next Thursday. Enjoy.
Before everybody goes,
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Tom, you got hockey practice, eh?
Oh, wait, I just want to mention that we've been talking about Howie's practices and the U17, and I've been putting them on that Facebook page, Ice Hockey Coaching Youth to Pro. So there's a lot of clips of those practices. I've been doing it while we've been talking here with the U17.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome.
And I think, Sammy, you said who's a goalie coach that was in Calgary kind of running things?
Oh, Brad Kirkwood?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure I've got stuff on there because I'm almost positive that he came and worked with our state men.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he was fantastic. I loved his coaching style. So if you have some drills like showing him doing it, I have revamped after 25 years the way to coach on the ice here for a week-long hockey coaching. Like just the way that he teaches the instructors to then teach and disseminate. And yeah, I loved it.
What I have is a couple of, like one of the injured guy players, he videoed and he had the circuits going a couple of times, a couple of practices he has, each zone circuits with the goalies. So
cool. Okay, well, I'll check it out. Do you have it up there now, or you're going to put it up there?
They're on the
Facebook. Okay, I'll check it out.
You'll have to scroll down a bit because I've been putting stuff from the women's team and the U17 team and then I'm doing pro stuff right now, kind of recent. And then when I was with the Red Bulls, because like we had Pierre Paget, but we had the Russian Olympic coach and all these kind of guys. They did a lot of good stuff too. So
Good.
Amazing. Well, thank you. All right, take care, guys.
See you, gang.
here.
Talk to you all later. So long.
Okay. See you all.
Tommy, are you going to go to any games at Winsport?
Nah, I'm much more interested in the practices.
Okay, well, let me tell you, I went to last night's game by myself. I was so blown away by the skill level.
Yeah.
And the team play. All first round junior draft picks.
Yeah.
I don't think we're ready to coach them. They're capable of doing so much more together. And that's.
He just really progressed to just having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hockey and then principles of what.
Yeah. Oh, you're totally correct. That's what I'm getting at with the structure that coaches bring to the game and fit into the structure and we can have success. And that's why I always watch the NHL and see who's winning on structure, see who's winning on creativity or the combination of both. So I think it's a learning process, and I'm really enjoying going to the games. And I'm going to sit with Dean Seymour, and I want to connect Dean with a lot of people, Daryl Belfry in particular, because Daryl takes the game tactically to another level of thinking, the way he approaches it, letting the student be the teacher, which is sort of what we alluded to during.
I know Daryl doing a lot of transition games.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that I haven't seen is we're still practicing forwards and defense. Like I'm doing the U17 male stuff right now.
Yeah.
And it's all a D are in black and the forwards. And if you're going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hockey, you could end up with 2 forwards on D.
Yeah.
And they have to be able to play. They have to be able to play a 1-on-1 and a 2-on-1 and all these kind of things.
Yeah.
So I think if we're going to play total hockey, we have to coach total hockey. Every player has to be like all the time I played, I never took a defensive 1-on-1 in a practice ever.
Yep.
You know, that I was, and I just remember, I just say, please don't go wide on me. And what I did is I surfed. I knew I was a terrible backward skater.
Yeah.
So I just naturally surfed because I knew I could skate forward. So I tried to get an angle on them because I know if I would have skated backwards, it would have just hooped me. But I think that's the one thing we have to do is coach total hockey, not just that you play it. Yeah, we have to also give everybody every skill there is.
Yeah.
You know, of course, and I think everybody has a home position, like you have your where you line up and what you're best at. You know, most of the time you'll be at that, but you know, we got D joining the attack. We have, which means the forward has to cover, right?
Yeah.
And you know, so if we're going to play total team hockey, we have to coach total team offense, defense.
Yeah. Tom, it's amazing you brought that up, and I'm glad you did, because tonight with Dean, I went down after the skill ice time and complimented Dean and Corey on the ice time. And after that, I thought about it and I said, you have to repeat the ice time, but have the forwards go to the defensive station and the defense go to the forward station.
Right.
The skating that they did on the defensive station with a puck, with the C-cuts moving forward and C-cut moving backwards, the edge work without a puck, with a puck, the progressions, forwards have to do that.
Yeah.
And offensive scoring in terms of staying in the zone and being engaged, that's the way the game is going. That's the game of the future. I agree with you, and you're ahead of the times. You always have been, and I don't know if our time we're going to see it come about. I just hope the female team has so much more potential, and I realized that in 2007 to play a way better game than they play today. Winning gold medals or not isn't the factor. I think they can play good defense by having the puck.
Well, you know, I just posted they did kind of an exact same drill as the Finnish, one of the Finnish teams that were here. And it was they leave from the circle and the forward passes to the D, and then the D, they go D to D and pass to 2 forwards on each side.
Yeah.
And what the Canadian kids did, they just skate straight down the ice. You know, they skate straight down the ice. What the Finnish kids did, they would pass to either one of the middle, the center, or the wing, but automatically, say they passed the wing, automatically that wing got in between the dots, and the other player took the ice behind so that they could create a 2-on-1 on that wide D. They didn't just go straight down the ice. And I thought that was, and the D's join in both both things, but I thought that's a real difference. It's just we're still coaching a very linear game.
Yes.
And you watch Tampa Bay, one goal they scored in the finals. They made 3 cross and drops, and the last was a cross and drop and then a wide pass, and the guy one-timed it.
Yeah.
So the game is being played. It's not at the highest levels. It's not so linear anymore.
Right. No, you're totally correct. Totally correct. Well, I'm looking forward to editing this one from the back, and I had a internal motive for getting Howie on, just wanting to share my thoughts on where the game is going, and I'm glad I got to do that because I learned a lot about the importance of the team building that he did and the process.
I thought it was a terrific session today.
Good to have him on. And do you have a nice time today or not?
I played yesterday, and we did that 2 goalies. We put the nets on the ring at line, and we played 2-on-2.
Yeah.
I don't know, Ken Hanley, he played at U of S.
Yeah.
And they're 2-on-2, and they're all pretty good players.
Yeah.
And would say that would be the best training you could ever do.
Yeah.
And if extra guys, you just put them as jokers you can regroup with and rotate. So
how many skaters do you have?
Huh?
How many skaters?
4 skaters. But you could have more skaters and have jokers that you rotate, and that would up the pace, because we warmed up the goalies for like 10 minutes and we played for 50 straight.
Wow.
So a lot of times you're playing zone defense because you got to take it on the ice. But it's just so you get so many touches, and the goalies love it because we even had 3 goalies doing that once, and they loved it.
Yeah.
Because getting shot so much they didn't mind the rest.
Well,
you put up to six guys with 3 jokers each, and just keep going and then rotate in, and it would be the best ice time. And then have rules like goals have to be on one-on-ones or give and goes or all kinds of stuff like this.
Tom, just for the benefit of any listeners, Tom is a believer in letting the game teach. And Tom, would you explain what a joker is, just for people who don't understand?
A joker is a player you pass to, but they have to pass. Sometimes you can have the rule that the joker can step out like they're on the goal line, basically, right?
Yeah.
So that they can step out 2 strides and take a short side shot. So the goalies have to, play it properly. They don't just play the pass. So the joker is someone that's there for a pass. Like one game is you pass to the joker. There's 2 defensive jokers, and it's 2-on-2, and they go D to D, and then the first joker jumps up and they can be part of the rush. So it's a 3-on-2 rush. So you practice that. But after the initial rush, they have to go back. So there's all kinds of ways to use the jokers, but they're just kind of there. It's a good way not to have players standing around.
Yeah.
Everybody's active, and it's a good way to keep everybody engaged. And
Okay, I've got waiting for a fence guy to come in to fix the gates, and I'm just going to shut off the record now, and